So now we're going to start adding a little bit of EQ. Firstly, we'll need to run everything through into different channels on the mixer above ReDrum. For that, we're going to make 3 spider audio mergers and splitters. So right click, create, spider audio merger and splitter. Let's do that 3 times. Hit tab to look at the back and run the kicks from channels 1 and 2 into one of them. Then into channel 1 in the mixer that we've got up here. Make sure that you've got both channels going in, so it's left and right, because default is that ReDrum goes into the first channel. We're going to take the snares, 3, 4 and 5, into the next one. And out into channel 2. And the hi-hats, which are 8 and 9, into the third one. And out into channel 4. And channel 3, we're going to have our ghost snare. Just straight in there. Now let's start with the kick. Hit tab to look at the front, and I'm just going to add a little bit of compression to show you what you can do with it. So right click in the combinator, just at the bottom there, and let's shift create, hold shift while you click, M-class compressor. Shift clicking means it won't automatically connect to anything at the back here. Now, we're going to hit the tab to look at the back, and connect the kick drum instance. We're going to connect that to the input of the compressor, and out of the compressor into the channel we just put it in, channel 1 in this mixer up here. Now when it plays, we can see the kick is going into this compressor here. Now we're just going to add a little bit of compression. Let's solo it out and take a listen to the kick. The compressor tames it a bit, but we're going to try and emphasize the bass of the kick a bit and compress that tail end of the beat. Turn the input gain up by about 5 decibels, and the attack right down to about 20 milliseconds, something like that. So the compressor kicks in 20 milliseconds after the kick punches, meaning that initial click will be retained. Now, try sweeping the ratio. When it's closer to infinity, it's clickier, and when it's closer to 1:1, it's bassier. Put the value where you're happy with it, but I think around 2:1 is pretty good. So there's a bit of click, but mostly that punchy bass end. Next, let's go on to the snare. Shift create a compressor, M-class compressor, and an M-class equalizer. Then route the snare, hit the tab, to the compressor, then the equalizer, and then back into the channel in the mixer, that channel 2 that is. In Bassline, the snares are generally really snappy and quick, so we're going to emphasize this by turning the input gain up to full on the compressor, the ratio to infinity to 1, and the attack down a bit to about 30 milliseconds. This means that 30 milliseconds after the snare hits, the snare will be brought down to the minus 18 decibel mark that the threshold has got there. The input gain means that it'll punch really hard initially, and the compression will kick in to stop it seeming too long. The volume increase from the input gain will be compensated by reducing the output gain here down by about 8 or 9 decibels, that's fine. So if we take a listen to that, see that snare is much snappier without it, and with it, much snappier and quick. I think the sample is too focused on the low end at the moment, so with the EQ, turn on param 1, and we're going to boost around the 2.8 kilohertz mark. Use shift to get more control over the value of the frequency there, and let's boost it by about 10 decibels, so quite a considerable amount, with quite a wide bandwidth, around maybe a bit more than that, 1.3. Now let's have a listen to that without and with. There, much clickier and snappier. Some people argue that you should cut frequencies rather than boosting them, but I find that so long as you're not boosting too much and you compensate for the volume in the mixer, boosting saves a lot of time rather than cutting either side of the frequency I want to boost. You might prefer to cut the lower frequencies instead though. Experiment and see what works for you. Lastly, for the EQing, we're going to run the hi-hats into an EQ, so right click create, remember shift click EQ, and then a compressor, so the other way around this time. So tab from the hi-hats in this one to the new equalizer, equalizer to the compressor, and compressor to the channel 4 in the mixer. And with the EQ, we're going to cut the low mids. So let's solo out the hi-hat so we can hear what we're doing. So hit the low shelf and turn the frequency right up to full and the gain completely as far down as it will go. You might not hear much of a difference, but this leaves more room in the mix for the snares. Also, so it's not too sizzly, boost around 2 kHz, so let's go up a little bit there, by about 5 decibels by param 2, and let's turn that on. And that just gives a little bit more definition in the high end, as you can hear there. Maybe let's widen it up a little bit with that bandwidth. So without it, and with it, definitely it punches a little bit harder. Now that compressor, input gain up to 5 decibels, ratio at 4:1, just leave it there, and the attack down to 20 milliseconds-ish. And without it, and with it, you can hear it just punches that little bit harder. To make the beat slightly less dry, right-click on the mixer, and create RV7000 Advanced Reverb. Turn it onto the medium stage setting, it's quite a good one for this, and apply to taste. Generally, you shouldn't apply it to the kick, since reverb in the low end of the frequency spectrum results in muddy mixes, but turn the aux knob on the hi-hat and ghost snare up to about 1/4, and on the main snare just up a little bit, just to give it that bit more reverb. So let's have a listen to that without the reverb, and then with it. Can you hear the difference? It just makes it all seem a little bit more meshed together. Lastly, we're going to use Scream 4's tape compression. So turn off the bypass and turn it to tape mode and turn off the cut and body modules. Let's take the damage control down to about 40, something like that, so it's not quite as prominent. This tape mode emulates those nice hardware tape compressors that give warmth to a mix. The P1 and P2 knobs emulate the speed of the tape and the compression amount, respectively. The higher the speed of the tape, the more high frequencies are kept in, so this can be useful for removing any piercing high frequencies. So if we have a listen to that. So with that higher, got more high frequencies, and lower, it just cuts them off to emphasize the low end. We want it a little bit high, so around 95, 96, something like that. And we're going to turn the compression up a little bit, about halfway. So, let's take a listen. And there you have it, a bassline beat snappier than my ex-wife. I lied, I've never been married. Join me tomorrow for day 2, where I'll be making the first of several bass lines for this track. We'll have about 5 different bass synths by the time we're done, since I figure that's probably why you're watching this tutorial series. Until then, have a play with your beat and see what syncopations work for you. Cheers for watching, and I'll see you next time. If you found this tutorial useful, help me out by rating this video or posting a comment so other people can find it. And don't forget to check out my website, boyinaband.com. Have a nice day!